Hey everybody, we get a lot of questions on our YouTube page about the type of equipment we use to shoot the show. And so I thought, what better way to answer that question than to make a little video about it. And what's really cool is that we're shooting this video with one of our new cameras. So that's kind of cool. We get to test the camera and make a video at the same time. So I'll start with the above water because it's kind of simple. We tend to use little mirrorless cameras, let me turn this on, with gimbals to shoot the above water stuff. So this is our little Ronin, and it's a stabilized gimbal system. So we can like walk around with this thing and it stays stabilized and smooth. So this tends to be one of our major go-to cameras for shooting above water, especially on a boat, places where things are rocky. So we like this little guy. And we also like, I forgot to bring it, DJI makes a little tiny version of one of these that's like a little tiny camera on a gimbal, on a stick. It's really very handy for situations where this is maybe a little bit big and bulky. But that's our go-to camera because we're always on the move. We don't use tripods that much. I mean, every once in a while, if we want to get like a solid shot of like a sunset or something, we'll put a camera on a tripod, you know, something like that. And we'll shoot rock solid. But mostly we're always kind of moving, so we like to be able to have nice, smooth camera moves. For underwater, for the show, for Blue World, I mostly am using this. So this is a Panasonic GH6 in a Nauticam housing. I'm a really big fan of the Nauticam housings. And it's got a vacuum system that makes sure that it stays sealed. And you know, inside it's a GH6 Panasonic mirrorless camera. What I love about this camera is it shoots very high resolution at high frame rates, so it gives us a lot of options in post for slow-mo and stuff like that. And you can see that the design of the inside of the housing is kind of amazing. So every button that's on the camera, I have a button on the housing. And when I push these buttons, they move these amazing little linkages inside, and I've got these little guys up here. I push this and it does this, and I push that and it does that. And I push, what's this one over here? I push this one, I push this one. And so it has these little fingers that go out and they push the buttons on the camera when I push these buttons on the back. It's amazing because I can literally push every button and turn every knob and dial on that camera through this housing. I don't know how they think this stuff up or how they build it or engineer it, but it's fascinating to me. Incredible. These things are not cheap. Now, what I like to put on them is this. So this is the Nauticam wide angle lens, and this is what they call a wet lens. So there's a lens on the camera that's inside there, and there's a flat port, a glass flat port, and then this goes on top of that, and it's a twist lock. It's a bayonet mount. It goes on there, and this actually has a little bit of water in between the back of this lens and the camera, and that's normal, and that's so that I can actually take it off underwater and I can do close-ups. And then when I put this on, I get a wider angle. And what I love about this lens is just how sharp it is. It's really sharp all the way to the corner. And so it's just a really nice lens. And it has this big bulky part around it. And this is really just an air collar. The lens isn't quite this big. The lens is more like that big. And this is just a buoyancy thing that helps it float a little bit because it's really heavy. So, and then I have a piece of rope, which is the handle to carry it. Now, what makes this really cool is we use this Loc-Line material for arms. And this is stuff that's used basically in machining factories where you need to have a hose that can carry water, which is coolant, and you need to be able to position it to to spray onto a cutting tool on like a lathe or something. And so it's basically designed to carry fluids and be flexible but rigid at the same time. And we have found that this stuff makes great arms for our lights. So I've put on our lights, I've put mounts, and I can pop this on like that. And in air, the light is kind of heavy, so it doesn't like work great. But in water, where this light is nowhere near as heavy, I can position these anywhere I want underwater and they stay, and I don't have to like loosen up a joint and like move it and then close the joint. So it's pretty cool. And then basically these just pop. They pop right onto the camera. So I've put these mounts on the camera. And I also have one on the back. These can just pop right off. And I have one on the back, which is basically sort of like an extended handle, which helps me shoot smoother. Because if you hold a camera by the handles and both of your wrists are like in the same plane, then the camera, it's very easy to jiggle. It doesn't jiggle this way, because you can hold that pretty rigidly, but it's easy for the camera to do this. But if I stick one hand way out here, I'm holding it in this axis with this wrist, and in this axis with this wrist. So my wrists are at 90-degree angles, and it's smoother. Yeah, groovy, baby. And then what we do is every time I upgrade to a new camera, new technology, baby, the old camera will end up being our B camera. So this is our other system. This is a GH5. This is the one that came before the 6, and you can tell it just says 5 on it. So we can tell them apart on the boat. And this has the previous generation camera, but it's still really good. This is a 4K 60p system. So this is the camera system that Todd or Christine or whoever's going to be second camera on an episode will be using. So I'd be using the 6, they'd be using the 5, and everything's kind of identical. We can get similar white balances and they match, things like that. Talk about the lights for a second. So we use BigBlue lights. It's a company called BigBlue Dive Lights, and I absolutely love these things. They're super reliable, they're super bright, and they have a couple of great features. First of all, I get a nice diffused light. It doesn't have a hard edge. It's a really nice video light. Also, I've got different power settings. So I've got high, and I've got one down from that, and I've got one down from that, and I've got one down from that. So I've got 4 different power settings, which is really quite interesting. I also have in it a red mode, which is good for diving at night if you don't want to get the creatures freaked out. They are less responsive to red, so you can put it on red mode while you're looking for things, and then when you find something you want to film, you can get focused, you can kind of see with the red light, and then you can pop it to white light and you can start shooting. So that's really cool. The other thing I like about this light is it's got interchangeable batteries. Now you might think, well, why wouldn't a light have them? A lot of underwater lights don't have interchangeable batteries because that's a way of keeping you from flooding them. They just have like a little cap you take off to charge, but we need to be able to change batteries between dives. We do long dives where we're running the lights for a long time. I need to come up, I need to change my camera battery, I need to change my light battery, and I need to get back in the water. So the fact that the lights are interchangeable batteries is very important. It also has 2 O-rings, and what's interesting about this is how reliable this is. I have never ever flooded a BigBlue light. I have got probably 25 different BigBlue lights, and I've never flooded one because of the double O-rings. And what I really like about this, and the people at BigBlue didn't even realize that this was a benefit until I told them about it. When the light is all the way screwed shut, it works. But if I unscrew this back by just a quarter of a turn, it interrupts the electrical connection and the battery can't turn on. And the reason that that's important is because when you fly with these, you're legally required to carry lithium ions with you on the plane. You can't check them in your luggage, but you want to make sure that they can't turn on because you don't want to melt something. These get pretty hot. They're designed to run in water, not in air. So you don't want them to be in your bag and accidentally get the button pushed and turn on. Todd had that happen to him and he almost lit his backpack on fire, and the backpack was in the back of his car and he had to like pull over, and there was smoke coming out and he had to dig into the back of his car and figure out what caught on fire, and he realized that he had a video light that he forgot to pull the battery or turn the thing so that it couldn't get bumped, and he had his backpack melt. So what's cool is when I unscrew it that quarter turn, the light can't turn on, but I'm still engaging both of the O-rings. So if I go diving like this by accident and I forget to close it before the dive, I'm not gonna get water in the light. So my general thing is I leave them unscrewed until right before the dive, and then right before I go into the water, I turn my camera on, I close both of my lights, and I know that the batteries are good because they didn't like run on the boat or something like that. So that's really cool. So this is our favorite video light for our cameras. It's 10,000 lumens. We use 2 of them on each camera. They have a nice diffused field of view. And I have other BigBlues. So I have their flashlights. This is my main cave diving light. You can see it's a very narrow beam. It's not a floodlight, it's a spotlight, and it's more like what we use for cave diving. And this tiny little light, if I run it on low, which is more than enough if you are trying to conserve battery power, this light will run for 6 hours. So that's longer than I'm gonna be diving. So that'll last a long time in a cave. So that's my cave light. And then I have 2 of these on my helmet up here. And it's the same thing, same exact design, just smaller. It's got 2 O-rings, it's got a battery inside. I can travel with it unscrewed 1/2 of a turn or 1/4 of a turn, and it won't turn on. I turn it on, I unscrew it, boom, it turns off. I really like these things, they're great. They're nice and bright. This one, even this little tiny one, still has 4 power settings. So it's great that they're all consistent and they're the same across all of them. And of course, we even have really big ones. Sometimes we use these when we're cave diving and we want to light something up in the cave. We'll put them behind, like I'll turn it on. Oops, I gotta close it. I'll turn it on and I'll stick it behind something to backlight it. Or I'll have the person that's diving ahead of everybody just sort of hold it out and light up the cave ahead of them, and just create an aura of light, because these are super, super powerful. These are, I think this one's 25,000 lumens or 30,000 lumens. They're really bright. We got a bunch of these. And they're set up with handles because we never put these on the cameras. They're just too powerful. You don't need this much light on a camera. These are much more used almost like pretend flashlights for lighting things up and backlighting. So with ancient caves, we used 12 of these to light most of the scenes. Now, when I'm speaking of ancient caves, when I'm working on giant screen films or IMAX, you know, big television stuff that's bigger budget and needs like a lot of camera power, I will use this. So this is my red system, and this is again a Nauticam Housing. It uses a red monitor inside this separate housing. And what's nice is that this monitor housing can be adjusted, so I can move it around. If I'm swimming sideways, I can put it so it's pointed this way, but the camera's pointed that way. Very confusing to do that, but you can do it. And when I open this baby up, I have to disconnect a few things. Take that, and I pull this out. So this is the camera that's in there. That's the red weapon helium sensor with a Canon fisheye lens on it. It's sort of my go-to camera for shooting giant screen films. And this rig is very compact and small and neutrally buoyant in the water. And I do have ball mounts on this that I use sometimes when I have heavier lights, but I generally use these lights on it, and I put them on these Loc-Line arms, which are also available on this red housing by just popping them down here on the thing. So there they are. That's how I like to do it. And I've got one on the back for a handle that comes off of it, just like on the other cameras. Kind of set it all up the same. And I just love this stuff. We always have a ton of it on the boat. And we've got some of them that have some floats on them to help counteract the negative buoyancy of some of the lights. These same kind of floats right here. It's just like a hard foam that doesn't get compressed by the water. It retains its buoyancy even when you go deeper. And so that's pretty much what I shoot with. And yeah, we should get a shot of the camera that Noah is working with right now. Noah, show us that cool FX30 that you're shooting with. Ooh. Yeah, this is the new Sony FX30. It's our new baby. It's Sony's little cinema camera. And if you haven't figured out by now, we like stuff that's small. You know, I like these little Nauticams that we shoot the show with. I hate to travel with that big red because it's just like, it's too much, you know? I like small and compact. I like to be able to carry on all my cameras in my little roller case so that they don't get damaged and I'm in control of them. And so we just like to travel light. And you know, we're using a tiny little drone now. Our drones have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. Now we're using like the little Mini 3 that's like this big. So we like to travel light. And of course we got a few GoPros. I'm not actually a fan of GoPros. I really don't like the image quality of GoPros at all. I don't understand why in this day and age GoPros still look so bad, to be perfectly honest. But sometimes when you're in a situation where you're getting splashed or you're on a boat that's really, you know, really windy or whatever, a GoPro is like the only safe way to really use a camera in those conditions. So we do use them occasionally. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed that. That's an introduction to our cameras.